John, how you doing, man?
Hey, Aaron. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
Yeah, I appreciate you making time. Such a big game, or actually a weekend full of big games in college football, and one of the biggest is kind of a throwback to the '80s in Miami and Notre Dame. And I know you're a Notre Dame alumnus. You followed that team closely, and a lot of Alabama fans probably haven't seen a lot of their games this year. But it looks like after a tumultuous season last year, that Brian Kelly's kind of righted the ship there.
He has. The short answer is he has. I don't recall, and I've been watching college football since 1978 pretty steadily. I don't recall a better Notre Dame team than this one. The 1988 team went undefeated. I don't know if they had as many offensive weapons as this team. I'm sure your listeners, they're well aware that Notre Dame lost to Georgia early this season. And that team is terrific. Georgia's terrific, as you know, 1 or 2. But this is a complete Notre Dame team that, unlike the teams that have been put out, I'd say since Lou Holtz left, what they do is they, much like Alabama, they win both sides of the line of scrimmage. Georgia obviously outplayed them a little bit, but everybody else, they've just been crushing. This is a team that's won the last 7 games by at least 10 points, 6 of those by 20. And they've beaten, teams like Michigan State. They've beaten teams like USC. They've beaten teams like North Carolina State, all by 20 points. I just don't remember a Notre Dame team, and your fans, again, down there watching Alabama are used to this, but I don't remember a Notre Dame team that has played like this.
John, where did it come from? I mean, there was so much negativity with Brian Kelly last year, and especially, there were close games. They couldn't get over the top, and then there was that I guess kind of interaction with the Lake and Littman earlier this year. It looks like it was the same thing, but they've turned the corner. And full disclosure, I have an AP vote, and I've had Notre Dame at number 3 for the last 2 or 3 weeks. After I had a bye week, Alabama did, and I got to watch them versus North Carolina State. I just knew that was a solid football team, both lines of the scrimmage, and it's just a really good football team.
They are a solid football team. Simple things they do well. Like if you and I am one of these people who, for worse, I would say most of the last 15 years have watched Notre Dame almost every Saturday. This team doesn't make the mistakes that those teams have. Any Notre Dame fan, you'll hear the word targeting, and they get at least one a year that really hurts. There hasn't been a targeting call against them this year. In terms of turnover points, it's 108 for Notre Dame against 10. It sounds a little bit like an Alabama team, right? Like they do all the things right. Their red zone offense is right up there with the top teams in the nation. Miami has a turnover chain. Notre Dame actually has a better turnover margin than Miami. They just you've got to give credit to the offensive and defense coordinators that Brian Kelly hired. I think the Lake and Littman dust up in the beginning of the season sort of has been much overdone. This was a team that had just lost its second game, 20-19, frustrating loss. And she was asking a decent question, which is, what's different? Because you just lost. Well, now we're 10 weeks into the season, and everybody can see what's different. This is a much different team. They got their comeuppance very early, but this is a much different team. I think it begins with the offensive line. For those of your fans or listeners who can go back to 1988 and remember that Notre Dame team, they were a physical, tough football team. If you look at this Notre Dame offensive line, beginning with Quentin Nelson, the offensive guard, they beat people up. You can find numerous clips, and again, reminds me of Alabama, of beating teams physically on the line of scrimmage, which opens up the running game. Meanwhile, you've got a quarterback in Brandon Wimbush who's the most dynamic runner they've had since Tony Rice, easily. Josh Adams is getting all the attention because he's got almost 1,200 yards. Brandon Wimbush has 750 yards rushing already, with 3 games left to go. And maybe one of the reasons Malik Zaire decided that Gainesville looked good. Maybe he, going against him in practice every day, he saw what the future was. So last year, that team wasn't as bad as 4-8. Just like in 2012, they weren't as good as 12-0. They were somewhere in between both years. And this year, a little bit later than most Notre Dame coaches do, Brian Kelly's finally got it all together.
Yeah, and they've been impressive so far. Talking to John Walters about the state of college football. John, I think we're in the fourth year of this college football playoff thing, and I feel fairly confident saying I think there are two givens this year, and that is if Alabama or Georgia run the table, they'll take up one spot. And I think if Notre Dame goes the rest of the way, with the schedule they've played, they're a lock. But other than that, you can argue the other two spots, but I think it's a lock. If Notre Dame wins out, they're in.
I agree for a couple of reasons. One, if they win out, they will have beaten Michigan State, North Carolina State, USC, Miami, and Stanford. And again, three of those teams they've beaten by 20 points already. One loss to maybe the first or second best team in the country by 1 point. Meanwhile, Auburn and, War Eagle, all those people listening, they're going to have something to say about this. I'm completely intrigued by those two games on November 11th and November 25th to see what happens. But for the sake of argument, let's say that Alabama and Georgia both win down at Jordan-Hare. Then obviously the winner of that SEC championship game is going in without a question. And Notre Dame's going to go in at 11-1. And then it gets to be, and again, things can change. We all know this, but, Clemson, Oklahoma, let's see with Wisconsin. And, if UW goes 12-1, they're going to be on the outside looking in. But if you were asking me, I would say Oklahoma probably has the best shot right now because they have the best road win. And they actually have two really good road wins right now.
John, what do we make of the Big Ten if and this is a big if, but let's say Wisconsin wins out, they play Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. We could be in a situation where Power 5, maybe the best conference in college football out of the Big Ten, goes unbeaten and is left out of the college football playoff.
Well, I don't know if you were listening last night to the 8 p.m., at least here on the East Coast, 8 p.m. ESPN show with Joe Tessitore, and Greg McElroy was on, and I am a big proponent of taking them at their face value, the four best teams. So as much as I didn't like seeing LSU and Alabama play each other again in 2011, I'm going to take the committee at their word that what they're looking for is the four best teams. And if you say that, then I'm of the opinion that I don't really care about conference play. I don't care who's the champion of a conference. I don't care about anything other than who are the four best teams. And there are different ways to debate that and argue that. I get it. But just saying they won their conference doesn't mean anything to me because you and I have been watching these games all year long, and I'm pretty firmly convinced that Georgia and Alabama are the two best teams in the country. At the worst, one of them is the fourth best team in the country. I'm not convinced Wisconsin is that at all. So just because Wisconsin goes 13-0 and happens to win a conference championship game, for me, that doesn't mean as much as what Georgia has done, what Alabama has done. And I'm not a conference, homer for any conference. I just feel like they told us the four best teams are going to get in. I'm going to take them at their word. And I trust that a few people in this world who I trust what their assessments are. Maybe not everybody in the committee, but I don't want any sort of conference hucksterism here because that's not what it's supposed to be about. Just
a personal aspect for this for you. Did you expect this year from Notre Dame? And if you didn't, has it added to the level of enjoyment of no expectations on it?
You know what? I didn't expect this, but I did, mention to people who cared back in late August that the Notre Dame wasn't ranked, and that they had a newcomer basically coming in at quarterback who people had no expectations from. And I was very happy about that because as a Notre Dame alum, those are the best Notre Dame teams. I mean, go back to Everett Goldson's first year starting, go back to Tony Rice, even go back to Kevin McDougal in 1993. It's all the same. There's a pattern, and I wouldn't say Alabama is this way because I think Nick Saban is just so excellent at consistency, but there's been a pattern of Notre Dame of being hungry and beaten down, and everyone's sort of almost laughing at you, and those are the teams that wind up being the best Notre Dame teams. And only once they get a little fat and happy do they get, humiliated and brought back down a peg. But when you bring in a season. Notre Dame is one of those schools that gets so much attention. I often think it's the best thing for them to have very little attention heading into the season. Again, unranked. Nobody was expecting all that much. If you go back to like SI.com's top 100 players in the nation, I think they have like 3 guys, and none of them are very high. Brandon Wimbush is not on that list. Josh Adams is not on that list. So it's been easy for the coaches to get their attention this year. It's like as Nick Saban says, rat poison. It's been the opposite because they have not had anybody in the beginning of the season telling them they were great. The Georgia game made everything urgent, and Notre Dame fans will tell you they have not had a better 7-week run in memory. And I'm going back to like the 1966 team. This has been the best 7 weeks of Notre Dame football since then.
Kind of feels like a throwback week. We got a Notre Dame-Miami matchup. It matters. It matters greatly. I don't know how much you've seen of Miami, but
I have.
They were a team early on, at least, that were kind of getting by the skin of their teeth. They're starting to play a little better. We know how dominant Notre Dame has been. How do you see this game playing out?
Well, I think, I see Notre Dame winning because they own the line. Like, again, this is what Alabama does. You can foolproof yourself on the road by being dominant on the defensive and offensive line. And I think both coaches, Brian Kelly and Mark Richt, knows this. Miami is 67th in the nation against the run. They are going to be jacked up for this game, no doubt about it. But, if you're going on the road and you can run the ball, which I think this Notre Dame team feels it can do very strongly, then you're going to be, I think you feel much more comfortable. So for Miami to win, in my opinion, they're going to have to get some turnovers and get the crowd in their favor early. But again, I just think this is a Notre Dame team that's really focused and confident and basically just like hitting, which is something like Charlie Weiss's team never liked. So I like the Irish to win this weekend because I just think that they can own either line of scrimmage. And what I've watched of Miami, it's been a nice season so far. And but basically the Georgia Tech game and the Florida State game came down to a 4th down conversion, which is great. But I mean they're going against a team that hasn't even had an interesting fourth quarter in 8 out of 9 games this year.
Talking to John Walters, you can follow him on Twitter at jdubs88. You got to see that Georgia team up and close and personal, and you can make an argument that both Notre Dame and Georgia are probably much better teams than when they met in week 2. But Jake Fromm, if Auburn, which has got a great run defense, if they're able to limit that explosive Georgia running game, is Jake Fromm good enough to win a championship with, you think?
Oh, yeah. No, he's good. He's good. He's confident. His first start as a college quarterback was at Notre Dame. And after that game, my only question was, when is Jacob Eason transferring back home to Seattle? I really, this isn't going to surprise anybody, will it? I mean, Jake Fromm just has it. And he's not the key to that team, but he's good. And if you watch I'm sure you saw when the Bulldogs played at Tennessee, 41-0, and he was taking, keepers and, he benefits. He's got, 3 great running backs, basically, and a dominant defense. He doesn't have to do it all, but I still think, and I've held every week all season long, that Alabama would get my number 1 vote. And then I'd put Georgia number 2, and I'd put Notre Dame number 3. But Jake Fromm is not going to be overwhelmed by any of this.